Something just hit the Harley market that riders have never seen before. In a matter of days, the entire country got slammed with an avalanche of street glides, dealer lots overflowing, auction yards jammed, and private listings multiplying faster than anyone could track. Whether Harley planned it or not, the effect is the same. Prices didn't just dip, they fell $20,000 in some regions overnight. Sellers are stunned, buyers are confused, and riders who thought their bikes were protected just watched their equity disappear. And here's the part nobody is talking about. This dump is only the first wave. Stick around to see why it matters for every rider watching. The dump nobody saw coming. It hit like a thunderclap the industry never prepared for. One week, listings looked normal. The next, the market drowned under a surge no rider believed at first glance. 2 million street glides and heavyweight touring machines appeared across feeds in what felt like a single breath. No warm-up, no warning. Just saturation so sudden it looked unreal. The overflow spread through classifieds, dealer pages, auction networks, and private groups until every corner of the country echoed the same shock. Where did all these bikes come from? Riders who watched Harley markets for decades knew values could dip. But nothing in the last half-century resembled this sudden release. Dozens of street glides lined up next to another dozen. Every color, every trim, from showroom fresh to well-ridden veterans. A flood like this rewrites expectations instantly. The listings did not rise slowly. They detonated. Dealers posted emergency markdowns. Brokers whispered that the back channels were cracking under weight they could not hide anymore. Some tried to downplay the surge, calling it a seasonal bump, but the volume was too large, too fast, too coordinated to ignore. When a market built on pride and scarcity collapses into oversupply, nothing stays steady. What riders saw on their screens was more than a busy weekend. It was the moment the old balance broke, and a new, harsher reality stepped forward. And the price drop that followed hit even harder than the flood that caused it. The $20,000 free fall. The shock of the dump shook riders, but the real punch came when prices collapsed with no resistance. Overnight, street glide values dropped nearly $20,000 in some regions, falling so fast it outpaced every past correction. One day, a clean unit held proud value. The next, the same bike sat tagged with a number that looked like a misprint. It was not a typo. It was the new reality of a market in freefall. The equity hit rattled riders who had cared for their machines for years. The value collapse spread across trims, model years, and states with brutal speed. Touring bikes, once considered inflation-proof, suddenly drifted toward bargain status. The sticker shock did not come from high prices. It came from the cliff they threw themselves off. As more listings hit, the price cliff deepened. A street glide that sold for $30,000+ only months ago now struggled to break the teens. Sellers refreshed their ads in disbelief. Buyers stared at charts that dropped like a stone. No guidebook could keep up because the market stopped following guides altogether. Value collapse happens when trust breaks, and this drop signaled something deeper than a temporary slump. It told riders the old rules no longer applied. Equity, once protected by reputation, evaporated under the weight of sheer volume. And behind the scenes, the warehouses and freight yards held the real explanation for how this freefall began. If you want the truth behind shifts like this, take a second to like and subscribe. Riders who stay informed make better decisions, and this channel keeps you ahead of the curve. Share your take and keep this conversation grounded in real experience. The warehouse trails and backlot evidence. Long before the listings exploded, the warehouses started whispering the story. Leaked photos showed pallets stacked higher than they should have been. Row after row of touring machines wrapped tight and waiting for shipment instructions that never came. Some freight yards reported storage overflow so severe that units meant to move west were rerouted east, only to be rerouted again when those docks hit backlog. The reroute pattern alone told a bigger story. Bikes weren't flowing toward showrooms. They were circling upstream, trapped in freight yards that looked more like holding pens than distribution hubs. A few drivers spoke off the record about being told to drop loads at temporary storage lots instead of dealer docks. Some even mentioned sealed sections, where rows of untouched touring units sat under tarp. as if someone upstream hoped the problem would solve itself. Dock backlog reports from late-season shipments showed the same pattern. Too many bikes collecting dust, not enough doors to move them. A storage overflow alert from one distribution center described the issue plainly. It wasn't a sales slowdown. It was a system jammed far past capacity. Once riders started seeing these leaks circulate, suspicion grew. Not conspiracy, not drama, just mechanical truth. When a pipeline holds more weight than it was built for, something gives. And riders who spent years wrenching on machines know that when pressure builds in silence, failure isn't far behind. That failure point finally showed itself. And when it snapped, the entire market felt the break. The numbers keep falling, but the road never changes. Check the description for the gear that keeps me steady, the pressure point that finally snapped. Every system has a limit, and Harley's distribution network hit its choke point long before the public ever felt the shock. What riders experienced as a sudden collapse was really the final release valve opening after years of freight pressure building behind closed doors. Trucks kept rolling because stopping them meant admitting the system breach. Shipments continued even when dealer demand softened. And every unit added weight to a pipeline already stretched thin. Inside the network, the backlog behaved like a machine running hot under load. Docks jammed, holding yards filled. Regional hubs couldn't clear inventory fast enough. When a pipeline gets that backed up, the eventual snap feels instant to the outside world, even if the internal gears had been groaning for years. When the release valve finally opened, everything upstream spilled out at once. Bikes that should have reached showrooms slowly over the year were dumped into liquidation channels instead. That sudden break didn't just hit dealers. It hit the entire market downstream, from private sellers to buyers who had been watching prices stabilize before this collapse wiped the slate clean. To riders who've spent decades diagnosing mechanical failures, the pattern looked familiar. Too much pressure, not enough flow, and not enough honesty about the load the system was carrying. When the break came, it wasn't a surprise to anyone who truly understands how things fail. And with that failure exposed, the deeper story of how the market unraveled begins to come into view next. Financing shuts down. The first real sign of deeper trouble came from the lenders. When the market flooded, banks didn't see opportunity. They saw risk. Underwriting tightened almost overnight. And the kind of easy approvals riders relied on for years disappeared without warning. Applications that would have cleared in a single afternoon were suddenly met with new hoops, stricter DTI ratios, and tougher loan caps that pushed buyers out of reach. It did not matter if someone had a perfect history or stable income. The rate spike alone forced lenders to protect themselves, and they did it by slamming doors. Inside credit offices, the language changed fast. Instead of offering options, loan officers spoke about exposure, volatility, and the fear of lending on a vehicle class facing unpredictable resale. Approvals denied became the phrase riders heard more than anything else. Even buyers with solid deposits found themselves stalled. The process was no longer about what someone earned or how responsible they had been. It was about a market lenders no longer trusted. For seniors on fixed income or riders hoping to join the touring world for the first time, that shift was devastating. Financing had always been a path to the freedom they wanted. Now it was a wall they could not climb. And behind that wall, pressure continued to build as the broader market kept shifting. That pressure finally showed itself on driveways, storage yards, and quiet side streets as a new cycle took hold. The quiet repo wave. Repos do not roar in with sirens or headlines. They arrive quietly, usually before sunrise, when most folks are asleep. This wave began the same way. Toe straps clicked in the dark as drivers performed lean recovery on bikes that had fallen behind on payments. Riders heard a diesel idle outside and knew exactly why it was there. The repo cycle had begun, and no amount of negotiation or pleading could stop the process once the paperwork cleared. Storage yards across the Midwest and Southeast reported yard overflow within weeks. Rows of touring Harleys lined the chain link fences, each one waiting for the next step in the auction feed. These were not wrecks or abandoned machines. Many still had fresh tires, recent oil changes, and upgrades a rider had saved months to afford. Yet, they all sat under dust, tagged and cataloged, ready to be moved along. Auction houses felt the strain immediately. Their lanes were built for steady flow, not a sudden surge in recovered units. Bids softened. Reserve prices went unmet. Bikes once expected to attract multiple buyers rolled across the block, with only a single half-hearted offer. It was not a dramatic collapse. It was a quiet one, the kind that hits hardest because no one speaks about it openly. And while repos grew, dealers facing their own shortages of cash began shifting tactics to survive another day. Those tactics reshaped everything riders thought they knew about dealership buying, selling, and negotiation. Dealers switch to survival mode. Dealerships have weathered market swings before, but the combination of saturated inventory, slowing traffic, and rising floor plan interest forced a recalibration few anticipated. With front-end profits evaporating, dealers shifted attention to the back-end margin. Every dock fee, extended protection plan, and optional add-on became part of a strategy just to keep lights on and payroll steady. It was not greed, it was adaptation in the face of shrinking opportunity. Finance managers leaned heavily on menu sheets to rebuild lost revenue. Instead of negotiating from sticker prices, conversations turned to monthly payments, coverage bundles, and structured terms designed to soften the sting while protecting the store. Riders, looking only at the out-the-door number, felt the pressure immediately. A deal might look impressive on the surface, but a line-by-line breakdown revealed how deeply the dealer had to dig to stay afloat. Survival mode reshaped trade-ins overnight. Bikes were judged against falling values the moment they arrived, and dealers could not offer what they once did. They leaned on every tool to control risk and protect thin margins. Riders felt the strain, but the deeper truth remained. This collapse did not begin with dealers. It began with years of decisions made far above them. Those decisions lead directly to the biggest reveal in this entire story. The overbuild equation exposed. The heart of the collapse traces back to one issue: unit output that exceeded real-world demand for far too long. During the boom years, corporate optimism pushed production lines harder than the market beneath them could support. Days supply figures crept steadily higher, but they were softened in reports and overshadowed by marketing language that promised momentum. Behind closed doors, aging stock-filled storage buildings, while slow sell-through numbers quietly signaled the imbalance brewing beneath the surface. Every touring unit built without a matching buyer added weight to the system. When supply outruns demand year after year, the gap between factory projections and showroom reality widens until it snaps. Aging stock does not just sit. It costs money to store, insure, and move. As those costs mounted, the floodgates edged closer to failure. By the slowdown's arrival, the truth was exposed. The overbuild had grown too large to hide. Warehouses stuffed with prior year units, hubs clogged with aging stock, and dealers refusing shipments they could not move. Slow sell-through primed the collapse. Excess inventory fueled it, and the mass dump became its final expression. That revelation reshaped how riders judged the brand's decisions. And with the core truth uncovered, the fallout across the real-world market becomes impossible to ignore. In the next part, local value gravity takes over. When a national market breaks apart, price discovery gets pulled back to the ground level. Touring Harleys that once carried predictable values across the entire country now sit at the mercy of regional comps. A rider in one zip code might see a steep decline, while another town only 2 hours away holds a stronger line. That regional floor controls everything. This is value gravity, and once it pulls a market downward, no national guide can override it. In the northern states, the price spread widened first. Colder climates always slowed winter sales, but this year the curve dipped earlier and deeper. Down south, the slump lagged a few weeks behind. But once the listings piled up, the numbers shifted the same way. Deals that would have seemed impossible a single year ago suddenly looked normal, and the only guide that mattered was what a similar unit sold for within a handful of miles. No matter how clean a bike might be, buyers now measure it against the lowest recent sale in their zip code. That new reference point drags every other listing toward it. Asking prices that once held firm collapse under the weight of a single low comp, and once a few sellers accept the new floor, everyone else is forced to follow. With prices slipping under regional gravity, a different kind of buyer steps forward and takes control of the entire negotiation landscape. If you value straight talk without corporate filters, make sure you subscribe. The market is moving fast, and staying ahead matters more than ever. Every update here gives you the edge to protect your ride, your money, and your long-term plan. The return of cash dominance. When lenders hesitate, cash becomes king again. The moment approvals slowed and rate hikes locked buyers out, the landscape shifted toward those who could walk into a negotiation with certified funds ready. A cash offer cuts through underwriting, skips delays, and removes every obstacle that once gave sellers leverage. The handshake deal returned, and with it came an older rhythm the market had forgotten. Cash buyers carry a quiet confidence. They do not need monthly payment breakdowns or financing menus. They ask for the key, listen to the engine, check the basics, and place an immediate title on the table. Sellers respond differently to that certainty. It shortens the transaction, lowers anxiety, and eliminates guesswork around bank schedules. In a flooded market, that simplicity speaks louder than any staged presentation or polished sales pitch. Dealers feel it too. Cash buyers skip delays, cut risk, and earn better pricing. They move faster, choosing bikes others wait to finance. This revival of cash dominance restores the old, touring bike culture built on discipline, savings, and direct negotiation. And as cash rises, the people selling these machines learn quickly that certainty goes both ways. Buyers want proof, not promises. Documentation becomes currency. In a market shaped by caution, presentation alone is no longer enough to move a bike. Buyers ignore glowing descriptions and focus entirely on documentation. Service logs become currency. Maintenance receipts provide reassurance. Tire dates hold more persuasive power than a polished fairing. The cold start video, once a novelty, has become the standard proof sellers must provide before anyone will even show up. This shift emerged because riders no longer trust adjectives. Words like excellent, mint, and flawless have lost their weight in a saturated market. Instead, they want evidence of care across the lifespan of the machine. A complete log of oil intervals matters far more than any cosmetic upgrade. A printed history of previous ownership speaks louder than a fresh wax job. Even small items like gasket replacements or battery receipts tell a buyer whether the machine has been responsibly maintained. Sellers who document everything gain a huge advantage. They close deals faster, face fewer questions, and build immediate trust. Those who offer vague descriptions or incomplete histories get buried under newer listings with better proof. Buyers have too many options now, and the first sign of uncertainty pushes them toward another machine. In this new environment, a binder full of receipts or a clear digital folder holds more value than any accessory bolted onto the frame. And once documentation became the standard, buyers evolved even further, sharpening their inspection skills to a level rarely seen in past cycles. Buyers get sharper, not softer. The modern buyer is no longer passive. With a flooded market and falling prices, inspections have become more thorough than ever. Every walk-around now feels like a veteran-level assessment. Prospective owners check fork seals for telltale residue. They run fingers along belts to feel for uneven wear. They carry small voltage meters to confirm charging health. They even crack open gas caps to catch the first hint of stale fuel or tank corrosion. The smell alone can reveal months of improper storage. This new discipline reflects the shift in power. Buyers know they can walk away without losing opportunity, so they examine every detail with a calm, methodical pace. They check date codes on tires, run lights and switches, and test brake feel with a practiced hand. What once took 5 minutes now takes 20. Inspections are no longer polite gestures. They are essential steps in protecting value and pride. Sellers feel the shift instantly. Buyers now want cold starts, proof of valve checks, and every detail verified. It is not distrust, just a new, precise standard. Veteran riders welcome it. They read a machine's truth at a glance, ensuring every deal begins with clarity instead of assumption. With all these forces reshaping behavior, the industry now faces the long-term consequences that will unfold in the next chapter of this story: Harley's corporate retrench strategy. Inside corporate offices, the atmosphere changed long before the public felt the shift. Executives watched the data tighten and responded with a retrench strategy built around controlled production and simplified offerings. Trims reduced across multiple touring lines marked the first layer of this approach. What once featured a long list of seasonal colors and small variations now consolidated into a leaner catalog designed to stabilize inventory, not expand it. Model cuts removed options that traditionally struggled to move, and each deletion signaled a move toward efficiency rather than novelty. Warranty gatekeeping followed, though quietly. Coverage terms became more selective, inspections more detailed, and approvals more conservative. It was not punitive. It was an effort to reduce long-term obligations at a time when the company needed predictable costs. Certified used programs began to receive more attention. These programs allowed the brand to remarket older machines with an additional layer of inspection, helping restore some confidence while keeping control of resale channels. The strategy is not flashy. Instead, it is the kind of tight, measured decision-making companies rely on during heavy cycles. It acknowledges the oversupply, the market turbulence, and the need for discipline. Corporate leaders understand that survival in moments like this does not come from expansion. It comes from restraint. But while the corporate world trims, tightens, and recalibrates, small-town shops are keeping the heart of the culture beating with a different kind of resilience. Small-town shops keep the culture alive. Away from the corporate landscape, small-town shops feel the market's stress in a personal, daily way. Yet these local businesses respond with a warmth and grit that reflect decades of community trust. When new unit sales slow, the rebuild bench becomes the core of the ICE operation. Winter storage fills early. Carb service returns as a familiar ritual. And the hum of wrenches echoes through local shop lights as winter projects roll in from riders determined to keep their machines alive rather than trade them away. These shops do more than repair bikes. They hold the culture together. When the larger market wobbles, riders drop by for advice, parts, or a quick look at something unusual on the lift. Owners greet each visitor like family, because in many towns, they practically are. The work might not be glamorous, but it is honest. Rebuilds, full overhauls, and seasonal tune-ups become the steady income that keeps these garages open through lean months. Carb throats get cleaned, bearings get replaced, old chrome gets polished, and engines that survived decades earn another season because someone behind a counter still believes in the value of working hands. These shops do not rely on corporate cycles. They rely on relationships built over years. But even the strongest community effort cannot fully escape the broader economic forces pressing on the entire market. The pincer effect. At the national scale, two forces squeeze the motorcycle market into a narrow corridor. The first is rate pressure. High interest rates raise the cost of every financed purchase, choke off demand, and restrict the ability of buyers to move freely. The second is tariff load. Increasing costs on imported components, metals, and shipping create a cost stack that pushes retail prices higher, regardless of brand intention. Together, these forces create an economic vice. The pincer effect is not dramatic, but it is relentless. Riders who budget confidently one year are confronted with payment estimates that feel out of reach the next. Dealers who once relied on steady traffic now watch potential buyers hesitate at the door. Manufacturers trying to maintain stability face higher overhead before a single bike even reaches a showroom. This pressure hits every corner of the market. New prices rise, used prices fall, and the gap distorts everything. It will not unwind quickly, because policy, not demand, sets the limits. These forces shape the long-term path every rider must navigate. And yet, despite the pressure, something deeper endures, something the numbers cannot weaken or erase. The rider's creed endures. Through every price drop, policy change, and market correction, one truth remains untouched. Riding was never only about the numbers. Pride outlasts fluctuations. Miles still matter more than resale charts. Heritage is not something that collapses because a spreadsheet dips for a season. Riding has always been a long-haul ownership experience built on discipline. People maintain their machines because it is part of who they are, not because the market rewards them every time. In garages across the country, riders continue to check tire pressure, change fluids, clean air filters, and keep their machines ready for the next open stretch of road. They ride because the sound of an engine means something far beyond cost. They ride because the road still offers clarity when the rest of the world feels overloaded. They ride because heritage cannot be devalued by a temporary downturn. Real riders stay steady through every cycle. They keep logging miles, maintaining their machines, and passing down hard-earned knowledge. Markets rise and fall, but identity never wavers. The culture survives because commitment, not prices, defines the journey, and the creed lives on in those who ride with purpose. And with that, the wider picture comes into view. A market under pressure, a culture unbroken, and a road ahead still waiting to be traveled. So that's where the Harley market really stands. Not the rumors, not the panic posts, but the truth riders need to hear. Whether this dump keeps spreading or the numbers level out, one thing's certain: every rider watching is going to feel the ripple one way or another. Now, I want to hear from you. What are you seeing in your area? Real drops or dealer games? Drop your take in the comments. If this breakdown helped you, hit like, and if you want the real story every time, subscribe and ride with us for the next one.